What's going on? And welcome back to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Your host, Tomas Keenan, coming at you guys today from the home office. Got Mr. Blake Elsner with us. He's the vice president. Can't talk today. Shit. I've been mumbling all day, and it drives me crazy as someone who speaks for a living.
It's that birthday party.
It probably was, brother. So, Mr. Blake Elsner, vice president of Elsner Real Estate, on the podcast today. And, you know, dude, I haven't had someone in a real estate space on the podcast in quite some time. I'm 5 years deep into this game at this point too. I've had my fair share of guests, and I saw your application and stuff come over. I'm like, yep, dude, let's get this dude up on here and rip. He's younger guy, probably a little bit younger than me, and just looks like a dude who's ready to hustle and have a really good conversation. So, sir, welcome to the show. Greatly appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. You know, when I submitted that response to come on your podcast, I had actually believe I was listening to an individual. He retired at 43, and man, he was impactful on your podcast. And I'm like, I inspire. Obviously, don't we all inspire to retire at 43? But as a 32-year-old, that kind of got me going. This podcast that I've kind of listened to years, Step It Up, is just, it kind of fired me up, and here I am wanting to be on it. So obviously people don't know me. I'm a third generation realtor. I've spent the last 9 years in real estate. Funny or not, I graduated with a criminal justice degree at Columbia College, and I said that, there's a ceiling in that, and I did not want to have a ceiling in my life in terms of growth, in terms of scaling. So I said, wow, my father's been in real estate as a second generation realtor. My grandpa did it, and we joke he sold one house a year. And we kind of built on that. And then my father, he's sold over, he's probably over 5,000 houses now since he's been doing it. He owned a restaurant at 18. He sold that, went into real estate. He kind of went down the path of the whole thing. People always said, you're never going to make it. And he's kind of always instilled that into me. And so, as society has always said, I went to a Jesuit high school. I basically, as I like to say, did absolutely nothing for 4 years. Besides try to, learn how to be a man for others. And unfortunately, when you become a man for others, they don't teach you. You got to put yourself first before you can bring your best self to others.
Yeah.
And that's a missing link in a lot of those Jesuit and Catholic type educations. But I'm very blessed that I was in that, and I got to go on to Columbia College, and I've learned a lot following, just listening to my father, and I've been involved in the past 10 years in about over 200 million in transactions since 2015. And that's an average ticket of about 300,000. So we are constantly in the trenches. And if that tells you anything, we're not, $1 million sale here and $1 million sale here, because I deal with those people and they don't know a lot in the real estate industry. They sell big stuff, but those deals, I'll tell you what, they're a lot easier than any deal we deal with.
Yep. I bet, man. Yeah. It's funny you say that, in my 20 plus years of being in small business and multiple different industries at this point, the easier sales typically come from the clients who are also business owners who do well for themselves. Like closing a $10,000 ticket item for me is easier than closing someone on a $279 a month, package where I'm barely involved.
You're so
wild.
Right.
It's wild.
Yeah. I think, and what it is it's that, I think it's that value mentality. People understand their worth, and high level individuals understand top level systems, and that kind of coincides with that value part. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I was there at that point fighting over a 279. And now I understand that, hey, if I'm putting 10 grand into building a podcast, that I know that what I'm doing, not only is it passionate for myself, but it's also a marketing tool, and it opens so many doors to a door where I'm on Step It Up now, right? This is a door that opened because of that.
Yeah, and that's just pretty much how it goes, man. Like this right here was something that I had a coach I had hired years ago who's like, you need a podcast, and here's why. He listed all the pros to it. And he's like, you're going to suck when you first start. And I was like, oh. And he said to me this, he's like, if you start this thing and you're actually good within your first 3 episodes, you waited too long. I was like, all right, cool. I get it. Enough said. I'm going to go and I'm going to suck. And I sucked for, I don't even know how long. You know, I listen back occasionally, and there comes a point in time with your own podcast where you kind of just stop listening to it because you got things dialed in, you got the team in place, things are going pretty good. And every so often I pop into one of my shows and I still get like, God damn it, I use too many filler words, too many ums and ahs and that stuff, right? And that also goes with this, man. Like we're high performing people who are driven individuals, and we are the harshest on ourselves. It's just a fact. Just a fact. And you know what? I don't necessarily mind that because that's what drives me to get better each and every day that I show up, each and every occasion I have to, you know, get in front of this camera and microphone and have a conversation with someone like yourself, each and every opportunity I get to go speak on stage or you know, do some kind of training, whether it's, you know, full blown, hey, let's go speak on stage and motivate some people, or let's go into an event and do a breakout session and dive in deep into, hey, this is how we set up a system for operations in your company. This is how we dial in hiring. This is how we attract and nurture leads. Like those are all things that we like to do too. And every time that we get the opportunity to go out there and speak and run our mouth, because essentially we're running our mouth for a living, it gives us a chance to practice communication. Right? Communication is everything to me. Let me ask you this. Sorry, serious question here. If communication did not exist, could you close a deal with a client when it comes to real estate?
Absolutely not. And
not possible.
Not possible. Not possible.
Yeah. And the deals where the communication is difficult are probably the harder ones.
You're exactly right. And everybody, it's case by case. And it's, you know, whether you're dealing with, you know, a divorce, whether you're dealing with a trust, whether you're, you know, that has 9 siblings involved making one decision. You know, there's so many different, a builder, you know, there's just so many different situations that can arise. And you're right though, the whole go-getter part of being like a business owner and really having to, you know, put yourself on the line to kind of, I guess I would say, elevate yourself is part of the drive, right? You feed off of that, and it's kind of like feeding off, like as you say, you know, you seek out your haters, and you're gonna find your supporters on the way, right? And I've started to figure that out, but that took me a little while. And you know, I'm 32, and you know, I wish I would have figured it out in my 20s, but here I am, and like I said, the day I figured it out was fine with me.
Yeah, dude, you're ahead of the curve if you ask me. I'll be 45 next month, right? And we're recording this right now. It's the final days of August 2024. October 8th is my birthday, and I'll be 45, right? And I have this conversation often, and I have this conversation with my woman too. Like, I was a complete fucking idiot until the age of 35. Right. And like I had accomplished some things, and I owned businesses, and I was making decent money. I owned a house. I had the cars. I had, you know, had a family at that point in time. But I was just looking back at it. I was just dumb in a lot of different areas of life. Right. And like so many, and not just one spot, like so much of me was just not evolved into the man that you see here in front of you today. So like, you got time, brother. You got time to put in and get yourself better. And I bet by the time you're in my shoes, age-wise, you're going to look back and say, "Phew, that 32-year-old version of me, man." Whew.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll look back, like you say, and talking about your beginning adventures on the podcast. I am already going, you know, as I was building episodes, going back, going, what is this backdrop you have on this? You know, he's still yelling at me about this wire behind me. And I'm like, I gotta get that covered up. But you know, stuff like that is you don't really realize it, and all the work that goes into all this and such like that yeah, no, I really enjoy like just the whole business aspect of life and this podcast and figuring things out. But yeah, so
yeah. So here's what I've learned with the podcast, right? There's a lot of people who understand very intrinsically, like in a deep level, what their worth is. And if you're going to have a conversation with that person, they're going to either blow you off, or in some instances, you get someone who's really dialed in, who's a full blown nerd, who's going to send you a paid calendar link. Like, cool, you want an hour of my time? Pay me.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I get the game. I totally do. What I found is the podcast is a workaround that paid link. So, hey, Mr. Joe Blow, I've been watching you on the socials for a while. You got some cool stuff going on. You seem to be, from my research and my due diligence, aka stalking,
Yeah.
I've figured out that you've got some really cool things going on in life. You had a couple of businesses, you're successful. Maybe you sold and exited one. Maybe you built some cool technology. Maybe you're just a good human being who likes giving back to those who are in need. Let's have a conversation here. Fill out this app and get on my podcast. That is like a workaround that paid link. And now I've got 45 minutes to an hour to have a conversation that I normally wouldn't have been able to have because that person put up their firewall in front of me. Right. So that has happened multiple times where I've gotten people onto the show where I normally wouldn't have. And here's the other thing I'll tell you too. Most people quit the podcast real early. They get a couple episodes in, like, man, it's too much fucking work. See you later. Once you get to about 50 episodes or so, and I want the listeners to understand this too, if anyone's considering to put a podcast out there. And I'm also a firm believer that your podcast doesn't have to have incredible stats. Because you have a podcast, elevates your authority off the bat. It just does. But once you get around that 50 episode mark, the podcast booking agencies get your contact detail. Don't ask me how, okay? But all of a sudden, after around that 50th episode, my inbox was blowing up from podcast booking agencies. Hey, and they shoot you the cheesiest pitch lines. Like, once you see a couple of them, like, you can spot them out in an instant now. And it's like, hey, I'm a really big fan here. I listened to your episode with, Blake Elsner, and the topics that he touched on were blah, 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 blah. And then the pitch comes right after it. So they grease you up real good in the beginning. And then I've got a guest that I think you should, really entertain or consider having on. Would you be interested? ? So for the longest time, I had an ecosystem of my own clients and people who I just like. I've got good people around me. I don't need to capitalize on these. So I kind of just shoot them away. And after a while, dude, I'm 200 and almost 50 episodes in at this point. You start running through your own circle of people pretty quickly. It's like, man, I have to go outside of my network and get some real better quality people on here. Not that the people I had on were bad quality, but I need like good quality, elevated individuals who've done some cool shit in life. So I was like, man, how do I do this? And I'm thinking of like all of these marketing ways. Because listen, if you're in business, you have to understand marketing at some level. You just do. And I'm thinking. I'm like, duh. I've been ignoring all these emails that have been coming over for like 2 years. So I wound up building, like, I'm the systems guy. So I wound up building a system so I can capitalize on the guests that were coming through to the show, right? So like the way that you got on here, you filled out that app. Well, that application is part of the system that I built. And it's also, I'm real big on, I do a lot of help on the coaching consulting side of hiring. And we talk heavily about hiring hoops. So if someone's applying to come work with me or one of my clients, you're going to go through this process. And if you don't do exactly what I ask you to do, you're eliminating yourself before you even get a chance to have a conversation with me. Well, the same thing applies with the podcast. It's like, hey, man, if you don't want to take the 5 or 10 minutes it is to fill out the long application that I have, then you're not the right person for this. So that application is long-winded quite intentionally. Not that it's terrible, but it's like, hey, I need a headshot. I need a bio. I want information on you. I need all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if you have this stuff at the tip of your fingers, which as a podcast guest, you should have some kind of press kit or headshot materials at your disposal very quickly, right? Then it's not a big deal for you to fill it out. But if you're someone who's like, oh, I just want to get on there, and you don't have that stuff, it's going to be like, that's a deterrent. I don't have that stuff ready. I'll come back to it later. So it saves me the time of having to deal with those people when they're not ready to come on the show.
Yeah, it is a very good vetting process. And I will say how you have it set up between, your application to the, acceptance part. You do build up that momentum, and the way you have it down, obviously being 250 episodes, you can tell that this is just all natural to you. And I guess going outside of your circle, having that application,
Mhm.
you're able to vet people and get these people that you don't know, right? Like myself on the podcast, and you get to talking. But if you don't mind switching gears here, what
Mhm.
I have found on podcasting is when I go, I deal with a lot of people in houses and older individuals or people that are moving, or maybe they're in the military, etc. So I hear a lot of life stories now, and I
Yeah.
have over my 10 years. So luckily I have a lot of people that I joke I'm a recovering people pleaser, so I never really burnt any bridges. So I go, now it's my turn to go back, and you're going to give me your time. Because I gave you a lot of my time. And so I joke that, like, the last call I went on, he was an individual in the Coast Guard, and he was on a mission, and their Black Hawk went down in the Arctic. I think it was in the Arctic Ocean, and I'm still reading the book, and it's basically the edge of survival. And this guy's going to come on and tell me his story about how he survived hypothermia and such. And now I also got the sales. So not only was it a marketing tool, but I also now get to connect with this guy
Mhm.
and learn about what he is passionate about. And I got to go buy his book, and
Mhm.
it's all a pull me up, and you pull me up. It's kind of
Yeah.
that type of thing. And I was always an ego type person that, I couldn't, I was fighting that ego and that other voice in my human design, um, that I had to kind of understand, like, let your natural self evolve. And it's kind of the whole, if you've heard of the love thing, it's let others voluntarily evolve. And it took me a little while to evolve, but as I start to figure this out, and as I start to figure out how to enjoy the journey, which I joke, I got a story about that. um, and that starts with enjoying the journey. And I talk about Disney World. It's like when you go to Disney World, every time I went with, growing up, with whether I was a kid or even the few times I've gone with my 4-year old, or soon to be 5-year old here, the two times we've gone, you always see those lines and you go, man, that's an hour wait. And you
Mhm.
just are just miserable. It's hot standing in
Yeah.
that line. And, and and I'm thinking to myself, every single time I got in those lines, I hated standing there because I just I was impatient, and I just hated the journey. And so I thought to myself, well, what the hell was going to make you think that you were going to enjoy the ride? So
Mhm.
by the time you sat there in that line, I get to the ride, I'm all angst up, and you get on the ride, and by the time you get off, you're like, what the fuck, what the fuck just happened? I just got off the ride. I don't remember the ride.
Yeah. I just
So
remember the shit line.
I just was pissed off in line all the whole time. I didn't enjoy the ride, and here we are. I'm gonna go do it again. And you're like, no wonder why all these people hate Disney World. And parents, they talk about the exhaustion of Disney World. It's because nobody enjoys the journey. Like, it's hard to understand that, right? So to really understand um that journey part, I had to really get go into a mentorship. I despised coaches for a while because I wanted to be a coach. I wanted that help. I needed somebody to pull it out of me and pull my true self out of me. And luckily I've found some mentors that did. And luckily, with my success already, it's just elevating myself to another level.
Yeah, for sure. I hear it, man. I hear it. Disney is an adventure. Disney is an adventure. I did it last year with some of the kids and my ex-wife, and we had an amazing trip. But it was, like you said, dude, even with like the fast pass and all that shit that we had, you still waited online, which blows my mind. It's kind of like, hey, we paid extra to get the cut in front of the line pass, and we're still waiting. What the fuck is this?
It's yeah, it's so true. And then you get to that. I mean, then you're flying home, and you go to the most miserable airport in the world, Orlando.
Yeah.
And that airport is something else. And, people are, parents are screaming at each other, and you
Parents
got,
are done by that point, man. They've been
yeah,
there for a
everyone.
week. They're fucking Mickey Mouse out eating the shitty food.
That's what I mean. And it's like, did we really enjoy this, or was this just to
People
have
please the
this
kids.
experience? Yeah, people please. Yeah, and it's like, what kind of example is that? So, I'm working on that type of stuff. It's the whole, like, you could talk about how I'm sure in aspects with you have like you said, multiple kids. I think I gotta have two hands, right? For the amount of kids you have.
Mhm.
But you gotta obviously, have a foot in with every single kid. And at some point you gotta have 2 feet in with, maybe one kid here and one kid there. It's like you gotta obviously put on different hats for each kid, because you got multiple different personalities and,
Of course.
and whatnot, different ages.
Mhm.
So that's got to be difficult to figure out.
Just roll with it, man. It's part of parenting, part of growing up, part of helping others. And you know, it's funny, you face the same challenges at home as you do in business and vice versa. It's one thing I've learned. And becoming a parent has had helped me tremendously in the business world. And I'm sure that was probably part of your experience too. It forced me to grow up and grow up real fast. And like, not that I was like completely immature before that, but like there was room for growth. Let's put it that way. So listen, I want to switch gears here myself. Let's dive into real estate. Obviously you're moving some product over there in the St. Louis, Missouri area. Talk to me. Like, we're in a weird ass year right here. It's 2024, right before an election. Things are up in the air. I don't care what side you're for. Like, things are just fucking wild in the world right now. What does the real estate market look like? What are you expecting to see before the election, and what are you expecting to see after the election?
That's it. I don't have a crystal ball, but from my experience, I tend to say our business, as somebody that we've consistently produced about 30 million in sales year after year for the past decade. I can say that these election years affect the market tremendously. What happens is, especially when you don't have basically two parties that are solidified, there's a lot of geopolitical tension. You got, well, first off, the Federal Reserve makes every data point, every comment, everything is now a ginormous schedule each month.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're getting, CPI data, you're getting PPI data, you're getting, which is, if some people don't know, PPI data is like the producer inflation, which obviously trickles down to the consumer. So you're getting all this type of data as employment number. And the Fed has to sit here and figure out, how to judge these rate cuts if they're going to come. And I think what's happening is they're finally understanding that the market is going to freeze. It's
Mm.
going to, people are the first off, people's chips are already tight to their chest right now. And if they don't cut rates, which they already technically are, they just haven't really talked about it. If you look over the past month or so, they've gone down about 50 basis points, and they keep going down, which is, they actually went down today. I just was getting a notification about that again, because they got to spark the economy. The economy needs some type of momentum going into this holiday season, or
Mm.
earnings are going to be terrible. People are not going to be spending money. They're not going to be going on trips, and it's going to trickle then into the spring, into the summer, and then that whole soft landing is just not going to happen. So I think they're going to have to inject money back into the market by cutting rates and producing a confidence factor that's a lot higher than it is right now. And that's gonna take leadership. And unfortunately, some of this stuff's out of our control. We just have to you know deal with what we're dealt, and pivot or adapt to
Yep.
the market we're in.
All right. So here's the question. if you were in a situation right now, personally, you didn't own a residence, but you had money stashed aside and you could afford to go buy one. Would you do it now, or would you wait until after the election?
I would do it now solely because I don't know what's gonna happen after the election. I can tell you what's gonna happen now,
Yeah.
and I can tell you that I can lock well, I can't, but a lender can lock a rate in today,
Hmm.
and rather than float it, I like to be certain on certain things. So most good lenders are going to say, "Hey, let's go ahead and lock this rate in," unless you see a massive rate cut. Now we do have a lot of data coming out this week where this could be one of those weeks where you do wait until next week, which is a little
Hmm.
strange because um, as we sit right now, there's some, like I said, the CPI is coming out, the PPI is coming out, and that is going to determine their September rate cut. And if I had to guess, it's going to be 25 basis points, which is already on top of this other 25 basis points that's kind of already been worked in. So I really don't see, interest rates moving a lot, but the appreciation of houses continues to climb. It's
Hmm.
kind of like utility bills. Like they say, oh, utility bills are only going to climb 4%, your electric bill. And then you go, wait a minute, for the past 4 or 5 years, I think it's between 8 and 10%.
Hmm.
So, and that kind of seems like how the appreciation of houses goes. Like they seem to underestimate it. And a lot of it has to do also with the lack of investment into millennial home ownership, in new construction. That was a big thing that during the recession of '08, 9, and 10. And I remember I was back in high school. I didn't think much of it, but they just weren't building stuff back then
Hmm.
because they couldn't. So that set millennials back from affordable housing. And I think ever since then, we just can't catch up. Now, as the birth rate starts to decline, I think
Hmm.
eventually it's going to start to, as generational warfare starts to, peak out, we're gonna maybe see inventory start to level out. But there's a lot of there's a lot of baby boomers that are in houses right now. Still, there's two of them in a 2-story house, 5 bedroom. They're unsure if their kids are gonna have grandkids. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They're unsure. So I do think I could present a lot of pros to buying now, and I could possibly present a lot of pros, but I could also present a lot of cons each way. So
Yeah.
what I would do is I always say, go in now. Some of the best deals happen over the holidays since
Mm.
COVID because people put on blinders during COVID or during the holidays
During
now
holidays.
because of life. Life's a little more precious, right? And people like to eat and drink and socialize. It used to be like, hey, let's roll up our sleeves and do some business. Now, since COVID happened, people are like, well, man, I think life's a little more precious. Let's just enjoy ourselves and put business to the side for a few days.
Yeah.
And I think that affects the bottom line in some of these businesses. So I say go out there during some of these holidays and find some of these deals. Like it's almost like retail now. Like there is like Black Friday of real estate, like or Cyber Monday. Like
Yeah.
it's just in a different form. It's just the lack of competition is there during those type of
Yeah.
holidays.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. So before we hopped on this call here today, one of the things you and I were chatting about was solar. And you mentioned that you have recently got into the solar game. You're not really seeing a lot of it in the Midwest. What was the spark that said, "Hey, I think this is a good idea"? What is? I've got questions about the company, how the company operates, just from my own, just being nosy and wanting to understand the industry a bit. I've done a little bit of consulting for a solar company in St. George, Utah, like 3 years ago, and those dudes had a pretty wild operation. They actually had the installers and the panels, and they actually had a sales crew, a third party sales crew that sold for them. And the way that the model worked was pretty cool, and how they were doing it was pretty cool. So what does this look like for you? What was the interest to get involved? And like, what does the fulfillment side of the business look like for you? And how are you guys operating that?
So yeah, I actually was kind of introduced by an individual that um has been in the solar industry since like 2018. And he came to me and he's like, man, you know, being in the real estate industry, you know, you're touching roofs a lot going into houses, and you're dealing with buyers, and since people are staying in houses longer, like I said, I wanted to figure out another product that I could offer somebody that's going to stay in their house for 10 years rather than move after 2, 3, 4, like in previous when money was cheap. So the whole solar thing kind of caught my attention. One, the sun is powerful, right? I mean, we all know that as a redheaded, fair-skinned individual. I can tell you firsthand that sun's not friendly to me, but to the energy, it can be very independent. So that in itself kind of sparked my interest. It's free, in a obviously in a sense. And then just seeing it on the coast. Now, like you say, a lot of things on the coast tend to not make it to the Midwest. Now I don't know if solar will. I just see a lot of upside. There are, you know, I would say a very, very small fraction of houses in St. Louis have solar power, and the ones that do truly understand it.
Mhm.
But, you know, in Missouri, you're looking at it's about 9 years on if you're gonna finance it to pay it back.
Yep.
So, I'm telling people like, "Hey, it's assumable." Like, it does add about 15% value to your house. And, you know, the next person, if you do wanna sell, can take over um, that loan if you do, you know, finance it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a and that's a part of trying to just convince people. But like I said, if they don't feel that energy bill, if that's not something that they actually go, hey, like they sit down and go, man, I really feel that energy bill, they're not going to make a change. That's what I've really kind of noticed. Even the ones that truly seem to care about the environment,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because I hate to say it, I quote the old the old rest in peace Milton Friedman. You know, he talked about, you know, it's not me who's greedy, it's the other guy, right? And he kind of like laughs about that. And and it's kind of true, because people like to put up these fronts, and then when you confront them with information to advance their cause, they put up blocks. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, you know, you're aligning your vision this way. Why is solar not aligned? And part of it might be because, hey, they don't have the money, but you don't get true answers is kind of what it is. But yeah, solar is definitely one of those things. So when you go to like in, I don't know if you want to talk about the install part, the sales part.
Yeah. So
um
what's the model look like for you guys? Are you guys just there knocking doors, selling the stuff, or are you actually a full service solar company where you're performing the install as well?
No, yeah. So Freedom does our installs.
Mhm.
They're actually it is a national company that they have a local warehouse in Mascoutah where they keep all the panels.
Mhm.
So it is in a way local.
Yeah.
The one thing is we're powered through Encore. And the reason why we power through Encore is because they are partners, are very good, have a very good relationship with Mosaic, which is the lender, the financing company that will finance at a very, very low rate. I mean, you're getting, at one point they were under 3. Now they've ticked up to about 4,
Yeah. Still
4
not
or
terrible.
5%, which is
Mhm.
still, yeah. So, you know, you, like I said, over 9 years, the one thing that's changing over time is, you know, Ameren, Missouri, Ameren, Illinois, they're beginning to lose money on some
Mhm.
of these big commercial buildings, because they're having to, you know, they're compensating some of these people for their power. Um, so they're taking that away, and you're gonna have to start like storing batteries, which is fine. It's just it's becoming an interesting industry between the tax credits and, you know, like I said, the cheap interest rates. At one point, Illinois, I mean, you were taking it, they were covering 60% of the install, like the numbers, you'd be like, the only reason why they wouldn't do it would be, if they're not hearing me correct, like
Mhm.
it, or their credit score was under like 650, like
Yeah.
it's like a no brainer, or they just simply don't like. There's a lot of people that don't like stuff on their roof.
Mhm.
I know that's like that's a thing around
That's
saying
my
like
mom.
don't touch my roof.
She's
Yeah.
she's not against solar. She doesn't want. She's like, the panels are ugly, and I want them nowhere near my roof. It's like,
Yeah, and
you know what? Cool, I get it.
that's a thing. So we have a software with this back office that basically we can create exactly where your panels will be on your your garage, like per
Sure.
se. I'm actually waiting on my new roof that I'm putting my panels on, and the majority of mine are going to be on my detached 2-car garage. So, which
Mhm.
is good because I'm going to be at like 102%. A majority of them you won't be able to see. And nowadays, like the the one thing about the backup, the batteries that'll be nice will be if power goes out on solar,
Yeah,
you
you got backup.
still lose power. Yeah. And so that's one thing people are like, well, wait a minute. I thought I'm solar. If Ameren, obviously it can't spin because
Yeah,
it'd
well,
kill all the
the panels,
linemen, right?
folks who don't know anything about electronics, and I happen to know a lot about electronics from previous careers, like the panels don't store electricity. All they do is capture the electricity and pump it into your house. And then your house uses it, unless you put some kind of electrical storage device. And if people don't know what an electrical storage device is, folks, that's a battery. So, and they've got some really cool, fancy ass batteries that are out now in the solar industry that do cool things.
They've
Um,
gone down in cost, thank God.
yeah, I bet they have. You know, it's one of those industries that I don't think is going anywhere. There's definitely there's some grayness and some murkiness to it. There's been some shady characters for sure in the solar space, but I think at the end of the day, I mean, it's something that's here to stay. And I heard this is going back shit a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago. It was one of the last visits that Elon Musk had on Joe Rogan's podcast. He actually, it was before the Cybertruck was released, like a couple weeks before it was released, and he drove down to Austin, or he's got a plant there, or he's got a lot of space down there. He went to Joe Rogan's spot in Austin, Texas, brought the Cybertruck. Joe Rogan shoots a fucking an arrow at the thing and dings the door, which is pretty cool, from a compound bow. Didn't go through. And he was talking about, Elon Musk was talking about, and he's presented this to the U.S. government, and they've turned him down. Okay, which is mind blowing, and I get it because there's too many scumbags in power who are greasing their own pockets through backdoor deals, energy, whatever you want to call it. Right? He has found several pieces of property that are open land that the U.S. government owns. Elon Musk said there's enough room there for him to come in, install panels, and power the entire United States of America off of solar. Right. But what happens to everyone who's got their pockets lined from energy and selling energy to others? They're out of the game. So they'll never let that happen, which I get. But pretty wild that, this technology is there, it exists, and we can literally power the entire nation, the United States of America, off of solar panels and never have to rely on any other bullshit ever again. And people are too concerned with money rather than go do that.
Yeah, look at Las Vegas. I mean, you leave Las Vegas and what do you run into? Whole bunch of nothing but sun. I mean, yeah, it truly is, one of those things that, then you have all this federal land and then they bring that up. Well, it's like, well, you can't do it on federal land. You can't, put these panels on federal. So it's just like we have that issue. I could talk about a whole nother issue with St. Louis and the Arch Grounds being federal park. Like nobody can do anything on the arch. It's just a waste of space. And it's frustrating because that can be a vibrant, now it's just a crime ridden area. Unfortunately, and like it could be vibrant, it could be the riverfront of old times, but that's a whole nother tangent. But yeah, going back to the solar part, like I think Joe Rogan, that they're spot on because it's very very possible. It's just like you said, nobody. It's the grease in the pockets. There'd be a lot of people shaking in their boots, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just I don't know. Yeah, it seems almost too easy, and I think sometimes when people think, the whole "it sounds too good to be true," it probably is. I think maybe solar is getting that type of a rap, and it's just going to take time. Like I said, once I put it once it gets onto my roof, I already have neighbors that are like, they're peeking their nose, going, "Wait, what's going on?" Like nobody in my neighborhood has it,
Mhm.
and
Dude,
when
that's
they
a solid
find,
lesson right there. Let me cut you off a second. All right.
yeah,
Solid lesson for those who are listening to the podcast and are struggling and selling shit. Be your own fucking customer. Like go buy and use what it is that you sell, because other people are gonna be like, oh, huh, that's pretty cool. Where'd you get that? Come to Papa. I got you. Right. So you're a prime example. Cool. I gotta do some roof work on the house, fix the roof. Cool, whatever. And I definitely advise doing that before you install solar, by the way. And then you're gonna have your crew come out, install your panels, and boom. But you're gonna get eyeballs from everyone who's in your neighborhood, not just the people across the street from you around the corner. Right. I mean, most suburban areas that we live in these days, like there's blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks upon blocks of fucking houses. So when Susie the soccer mom is driving past your house, oh, they put solar on the house, it's going to spark interest, right?
it's exactly right,
Yeah,
and they're gonna want to know. Like it's just, yeah, it's one of those things. Like if you can be the first one, or try to be the first one there, like you're saying, it's you got to test the product though. Like you say, like me putting it on my roof is a major part. Me buying property is a major part of real estate, or me, showing people, hey, I can purchase this in this area, so can you. So it's stuff like, yeah, it's definitely like beyond like just like a sale part.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the upside is really tremendous, and I'm kind of excited to see if it takes off when I do get it on my own roof, and I think it will. Like, and like you say, that was a great point to stop me and talk about that, because yeah, anything you're selling, if you don't have it or whatnot, like the guy that I'm bringing on, my only rep, he has solar and he's had it on his house since 2019. The guy knows way more than I do about solar. Why would I bring him on? Because that makes complete sense. He knows way
Yeah.
more. It's already on his roof. He's telling me all about it. My other mentor, he's got it on his roof. Now, once I get it on my roof, I'm just filling my brain, gonna get the product. But yeah, that is a very good point, Thomas, to make. Is if you're gonna sell something, either get to know that product really well, or have it
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, have it yourself. Yeah, it's like guys in the car dealership space, talk about that all the time. Like, hey man, if you're gonna sell fucking Acuras, you better own one. Right? You better be pulling up to the lot, and the customer's seeing you walk in and pull up driving that Acura. It's like, hey man, like why are you gonna go sell Mercedes and then roll up in your Altima? It makes no sense. It makes no sense, especially when you're dealing with a higher end clientele, like you're most likely going to find in a Mercedes dealership, right? So, and look,
That,
man, that's a whole other rabbit hole we can go into. Hopefully, that Mercedes dealerships are paying commission enough. These guys can afford their cars; they should be. That's one thing you couldn't pay me enough to do. I spent 20 years in the automotive industry,
oh
right?
wow.
One thing you could never pay me to do is sell fucking cars in a dealership environment. Nope, I would murder somebody, and it would not be good.
I'm gonna say I buy cars from one guy and one guy only, and I say, man, you better have it done in like 20 minutes, because I'm not
Yeah,
sitting there. Like, have
I
that, have it done.
yeah, I got one guy too. He's actually based out of Virginia, and the last 3 vehicles I bought, I called him up and said, "This is what I want," and send it, and he just sent me over all the paperwork. Didn't dude, legit. Here's the credit app. Fill this out. Cool, you're approved. This is when the vehicle's coming in, and we're going to ship it right to your door when it comes in. The vehicle comes in with a giant envelope with sticky tabs on there, and it's like, sign here, 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 and here, and here's your FedEx envelope to overnight it back to us. Like the easiest car buying experience ever.
That's you know what? And I feel like that's why like some of these like Carvanas and whatnot, they really do well because like you're saying, what he just did or how you got that delivered it's like a super app. And I think eventually that's another big thing that's on my brain is as millennials and Gen Z, and it's all about that one-stop shop, man. If and Zillow's one of these people that's taking aim at this. And watch out because they own like our showing service, they own Dot Loop, they own all this stuff. And if they take control, guess what? Now I got to play ball with Zillow. And I don't like playing ball with Zillow really. So, but at the same time, I like, solar, there's enough to go around. There's enough to go around. We all can play fair. We all should support each other. We all should, unify each other and whatever we do. And that was one thing I never did. And I woke up in survival mode daily. And it's now I'm enjoying the journey and I get to be on like a podcast like this and get to express myself.
Yep. Love it, dude. Hey man, appreciate you popping in here today and jamming with us and having some good, open, authentic, direct conversation. Where's the best place we can stalk you on the socials? Where we go?
Yeah, hell yeah. You just go to my Facebook, Blake Elsner. I'm big into branding myself because if I brand myself, you can kind of know my last name and then everything's spun off of that. So every website link to our Solarized Tech company, our transaction company, our real estate in St. Louis, all that fun stuff. I put a lot of good content up. I got my podcast, Elevate with Elsner, as well. You can check that out. So yeah, a lot of different places. Find us. We got a website for real estate that really is going into the dinosaur age, I think, for platforms in terms of getting business. It's all about Google business and whatnot and SEO, but we could go down that rabbit hole too, right? So
yeah, we sure could, man. Appreciate you popping in here today, man.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Make sure you head over to stepitupentrepreneur.com and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast.